Lewisboro Land Trust is pleased to present this video intended for 4th graders at Meadow Pond Elementary School to support their distance learning about land and water as part of their science curriculum. This hike was sponsored by the parent-teacher organization at Meadow Pond Elementary School. It was filmed at Honor True Reservation and led by naturalist Jim Nordgren. We hope you will find the topics discussed in this video educational. Stay well and be safe on the trails.
Hi, it's Jim, and we're wearing our masks today, and I hope you're all healthy. We're going to explore the streams here at Onatru, and this is all part of your lesson plan of land and water. We walked this with some of your teachers, with Mr. Briggs and some others last October, and we found some nice examples that we think will illustrate some of the things you're learning in school. It's always nice, I think, in addition to learning from a textbook and the experiments you're doing, to see how it works out in nature. So we're going to study how water flows over the land, and we're going to talk about flow and slope, and how with greater slope the water is going to go a little faster, maybe create a little more erosion, maybe scour some of the stream banks. And then we're going to see also examples of when there's less slope, how the speed of the water slows down and forms maybe pools and does something called soil deposition, which means the silt will fall out and create beaches or deltas or sandbanks. And then we'll talk a little bit about climate change and how it's increased the amount of rain. So we call that flashiness. So streams are getting more volume more quickly, so they're scouring more and causing more erosion. We can talk a little bit about the role plants play in protecting the water, shading it, keeping it cool for wildlife. And we could talk finally about pollution, how stormwater running off from the way houses are sited, and you're going to study how houses are sited, how that can, if it's not done correctly, create stormwater that carries with it pollutants like sand and silt and nitrogen and phosphorus, and how the physical velocity of the stormwater, in addition to the pollutants it's carrying, can scour and create erosion and pollution, and how that can affect streams and the wildlife in it. So let's go see what we can find. You're going to learn about tributaries and how they all flow together into a stream and creating a big river. Another way water enters into the land is from something called seeps. So these are, you could think of them as kind of underwater streams. So we can see a body of water here, and there's no real source for it. So what's happening is it's coming down again off a slope. The water following the gravity is coming underground and somehow coming out here and creating this little pool. And again, what's interesting about the seeps is that it's coming from the underground. And we know that the temperature down about 6 feet is a steady kind of 50, 60 degree temperature, even in winter, even in summer. So the seeps provide an important function by keeping water that would otherwise freeze in winter, keeping it warm. So all sorts of insects can live in there when they would freeze otherwise. And the seeps, on the converse, because they're an even temperature of 50 or 60 degrees in a hot summertime, will feed into a stream or another body of water to keep that cool, so that animals like certain fish, trout, that can only live in cool temperatures are able to thrive. In talking about slope and how that affects flow of water, there's no better example than a dam, a man-made dam. What the dam is doing is abruptly slowing the water right here, of course, to create the pond, which is what the farmer made this maybe 100 years ago when there was a farm here. but the dam physically slows the water. And what's happening in all ponds is by slowing the speed of the water, the silt can fall out and deposit the soil, and the soil will build up and create a lot of mud, which can be a problem over a long period of time. Eventually, this pond, because the water coming in is being slowed and the particles are falling out, they're collecting on the bottom of the pond right behind the dam and filling up. So over time, a pond like this will eventually fill in from all the silt that's being deposited, and some people will dredge it or it will naturally fill in. So we're just talking about how the dam slows the water and allows the sediments to fall down. And what's happening in this pond is it's filling in. Now, we just saw a little green frog hop in here, but I don't think we're going to find much in the way of eggs, wood frog eggs or spotted salamander eggs that you might usually find in a vernal pool. You're most likely not going to find right here, because the problem with that silt falling out and settling to the bottom is it will cover up and smother the eggs, not allowing them to hatch. Silt will also, as it slows down and falls to the bottom of a stream, will also cover up vegetation. So the silt is a problem, it's a pollutant, and by covering up the vegetation, fish and other animals that will feed on the plant life at the bottom of a clean stream or a clean lake are not able to do that here, because it's covered over with silt that's falling out of the water because the water is being slowed down by a dam in this case. Here's a good example of how slope affects the flow of water, kind of an extreme case. As this water is flowing off, and I believe it's coming off the road, so it's storm water, but because the slope is so severe, it's falling down and cascading and creating these ripples, as opposed to a flat stream where you'd see just kind of a flat surface. So these ripples, in addition to being really nice to listen to, they provide oxygen. They continue to aerate the water, and that's good. It adds more oxygen to the water, and dissolved oxygen is an important indicator of the health of a body of water. If dissolved oxygen is low, that's a sign of pollution, whether it's nitrogen running off from lawns, creating an algae bloom, and then when the algae dies, the bacteria suck up all the oxygen. When that happens, a lot of the wildlife cannot live in a stream. So what's going on here is the cycling, turning over the water with the steep slope, is adding oxygen. Some people think it also gives off ions, and I'm not sure about that. The science isn't clear on that. But some people think the ions that are coming off from a bubbling stream make us feel better. And I don't know if it's the ions, but I know I feel a lot better by a bubbling stream. This is an interesting historic artifact here where humans have diverted water from the stream, and we figured out that what the farmer did maybe 100 years ago was block the main stream there and force the water to come through here. I guess by blocking it, the velocity probably sped up and fed into the pond. So this was really how the farmer created that pond. He diverted the stream and let it flow all the way down here. Once again, we're seeing soil deposition because the water is slowing down as it goes through here, and all the particles are falling out and filling in here and creating beaches or deposition, deltas, whatever you may call it, where gradually this is filling in because the speed of the water was stopped there and diverted here to create a pond. We also noted that we see humps here about every 30 feet, and we imagine that the farmer must have had oxen or cattle with a plow or a blade to make this channel, and just like a snow plow, it piles it up and then turns a little bit because it's all filled up, shakes the plow clear of the dirt, continues, plows a little more, continues, plows a little more. We can't prove it, but we think that's why we have all these mounds here. Here's another example. Here's an example of how the velocity of water can speed up as it has to bend a little bit. So many times on the outside of a stream like this, the outside has to go a little faster than the inside. It kind of pivots. So because it's going faster and has more power on the outside here, it's scouring and creating erosion and cutting into the embankment. And if you look, you can see how it's undercut the stream bank here. Not in a bad way. I can imagine that's creating a lot of habitat for wildlife. We also have a trout lily that's blossoming over here. A pretty yellow flower that maybe we can take a look at.
Look at the stream.
Mm-hmm. We'll see another one. Here, as the water is speeding up, as I mentioned, you can see it undercutting here, but it's carrying all the sediment along with it. So all these stones are not covered by any sediment. And if you're a trout or another kind of fish, that's a great place to lay your eggs. And if you're looking for macroinvertebrates, underneath here, you'd see all kinds of insect larva forms of caddisflies, mayflies, and black flies. Maybe we'll see some more down the stream. But it's nice to see the nice clean water here because the speed of the stream's carrying all the sediment. Here's an example, extreme example of the sediment being deposited here as the stream has slowed down. We've got deltas or beaches right here out of sand. And I have a hunch that this isn't natural. I think this is, it just doesn't look, it looks like there's just too much sand here. And I think this is probably coming from the road. I'm not sure. But it's probably carried by stormwater runoff from houses either here or on Elmwood Road. And it's a reason why we try to control stormwater so it doesn't create these big deltas or beaches or sandbars, because again, it's bad for wildlife, smothers eggs, smothers food, and carries with it pollutants like nitrogen and phosphorus. We can also see an example over here of stream bank being eroded a bit. So in this black birch, you see how it's tilting, and over there is a beech with the light bark that's got its roots exposed. So both of those are leaning into the stream, and that means they weren't always like that. What's happening is there's more water coming down here for whatever reason, and it's undercutting the stream bank, and it's causing the trees to lean in. So that's a sign of something we don't want to see, that the structure of the stream bank is changing, probably because of greater precipitation due to climate change, or because of greater development on both sides of in the watershed, creating more soil and more stormwater flowing into the stream.
Okay, go.
One fun thing to do to explore the wildlife in a stream is to, you can either use a kick net, which is a mesh kind of net that will collect things downstream, or you can just pick up some leaves. And there's a whole other world in here of, they're called macroinvertebrates, and those are insects, and they would include, as I mentioned, caddisfly, blackfly, mayflies. Here it is in April, so we're not seeing the mayflies with wings on them, but the macroinvertebrates are in here, and it's a fun thing to do when you have some time. You can also, depending on what species of insects are in the stream, you can get a good idea of whether it's polluted or not. So many macroinvertebrates are extremely sensitive, as I mentioned, to oxygen. So if you have caddisflies, blackflies, stoneflies, mayflies, that's an example of a stream that's not polluted. If you can't find those, probably because you probably have not enough oxygen and too much silt in the stream. So sometimes when it's that polluted, you'll only find things like certain worms, like bloodworms. Can't tell in this case because I need a hand lens, but my hunch is this is it looks like a very clean stream, and in another couple weeks it'll be the hatch, which is when the macroinvertebrates become flying insects, and we'll see this come alive with blackflies and mayflies, and that's what trout fishermen try to emulate when they make a fly tie. So in another couple weeks we'll see this all come to life with all sorts of buzzing insects. So here the slope has turned into almost no slope at all, very flat. So the water has slowed down. It's not clearing out the sediment. We can see turbidity, which is kind of muddiness, and these are all the different silt and sediment particles in the stream, a sign of pollution. We also can see all around here, this is a whole kind of flood plain where if this were steep, this would be a rocky ravine and channel. Because it's flat and slow moving, it has fanned out and created this floodplain. And it's all the soil here is very moist, so we can see a lot of different plants that live in wet soil, also called hydric soil. The most common is the skunk cabbage. We also had false hellebore, which looks like skunk cabbage. We've got sensitive fern right there, last year's growth. We've got a yellow birch. We've got winterberry with all the berries gone. We've got blueberry over there and spice bush here also. And these are all examples of plants that live in this kind of floodplain wetland created by the lack of slope in the stream. We talked a little bit how important vegetation, plants are for a variety of reasons. And here's a good example of a stream that's completely forested on both sides. And this is what we want to see to have a clean, well-functioning ecosystem. And the trees, of course, are taking carbon dioxide in, absorbing carbon, mitigating a bit climate change, giving off oxygen for us all to breathe. They're also filtering the water as it comes in from the sides of the stream. The roots are filtering the water and taking out pollutants. The branches and the leaves are intercepting the rain that's coming down. And we said that with climate change, we're getting more frequent precipitation and more heavier storms, as we all know. And the branches and leaves can slow down, intercept that, so that the water is not crashing to the ground and creating more erosion. The trees will also shade the stream, and that will keep it cool in the summer, so that wildlife, the best example would be trout that need very cool streams, and all sorts of other wildlife can survive in the middle of a hot summer that might otherwise create drought, might dry up the stream if there weren't trees here, and would certainly make the water hot and maybe too hot for wildlife. Can influence how fast the water is going and therefore how it moves across the land. And we saw that the slope was mechanically influenced by humans with the dam, but what creates slope? And in this area, the streams in Lewisboro are all cut through very soft rock. So water, as hard as it is to believe, over a long period of time can erode rock and create soil and create stream beds. So the stream beds are in this area in Lewisboro are over very soft rock. Usually it's limestone rock, which is easy for the water to carve through. The hills are made out of granite, which, as you know, is a very, very strong rock. So up on the sides, we've got a lot of granite rocks, and here in the stream bed, the reason we have a stream bed is because it's lower elevation, because the water, since the last glacier melted 10,000 years ago, drained out through here all the way to Long Island Sound in the typical north-south pattern we see in this region, and carved through the soft rock, lowered the elevation, allowing the gravity to pull all the water in and creating a slope steep slope on the sides where the granite is, and a slightly less slope in the center where the limestone was, where the water carved it out and created the channel. This is coming from Untitled Farm, which was given to the town by Alice Lake. The name is very interesting. American name, like so many places around here, because Alice always wanted to live, she said, on a true farm. So it's a true farm. We also didn't get a chance to get pictures of some of the wildlife here, but being in this stream community, we did hear phoebes, which are just migrating back now. So it's another sign that this is a pretty healthy ecosystem here. Hearing all those birds here, and I don't know if you heard the cardinal, of course. And then lastly, the white-throated sparrow, which is going to be leaving here in a couple weeks to go up to Canada. So I hope to see you all soon here at On a True Farm.